Standing silent for thousands of years, its massive stones catching the first light of dawn, Stonehenge remains one of history's most enduring puzzles. How did Neolithic people armed only with rudimentary tools and sheer human determination haul these colossal rocks across miles of rugged terrain and arrange them with such precision? The sheer scale of their achievement defies belief, sparking centuries of debate among archaeologists, engineers, and storytellers alike. This isn't just a monument, it's a testament to the ingenuity of our ancient ancestors, a riddle carved in stone that whispers secrets of a forgotten world. Picture this, a time before written records, before metal tools, even before the wheel. Yet somehow, these early builders orchestrated a feat that would challenge modern engineers. Some of these stones weigh as much as 50 tons, equivalent to stacking 10 elephants atop one another, and were dragged from quarries over 150 miles away. The logistics alone boggle the mind. Were they driven by celestial devotion, guided by forgotten knowledge, or spurred by something even deeper? The answers lie buried in the soil, woven into myths, and etched into the very bones of the landscape. Today, we're peeling back the layers of time to uncover how Stonehenge rose from the earth. From the backbreaking labor of transporting monolithic slabs to the celestial alignments that may have guided its design, every clue reveals a piece of the puzzle. We'll explore cutting-edge archaeology, decode ancient myths, and even revisit daring experiments where modern teams attempted to replicate these awe-inspiring techniques using only Neolithic methods. This is more than a story of stones. It's a window into the minds and hearts of the people who dared to imagine the impossible. So let's step into their world, where myth and engineering collide, and discover how humanity's oldest marvel came to be. The story of Stonehenge begins not as a single grand vision, but as a work in progress shaped over centuries by hands we can only imagine. Around 3000 BCE, long before the pyramids of Egypt rose from the desert, Neolithic farmers in Britain started digging a circular ditch with tools made of bone and antler. This humble earthwork, now called Stonehenge's first phase, was more than a ditch. It was a boundary between the ordinary and the sacred, lined with animal bones and antlers that hint at rituals lost to time. But the real mystery unfolds over the next 1,000 years, as the site transforms in 3 dramatic stages. The second phase, around 2900 BCE, introduces something startling: timber posts arranged in concentric circles. Archaeologists call this the Aubrey Holes, named after the 17th century antiquarian who first spotted them. These wooden structures suggest Stonehenge was once a place of gatherings, perhaps for ceremonies or communal feasts. But then, around 2500 BCE, the vision shifts again, this time toward stone. Enormous bluestones, some weighing 4 tons, were hauled from the Preseli Hills in Wales, a grueling journey of over 150 miles. Why choose stones from so far away? Some theories point to their believed healing properties, while others suggest these rocks held ancestral significance, carried like sacred relics to this windswept plain. By the final phase, Stonehenge takes its iconic form. The massive sarsen stones, some towering 20 feet high, arranged in the now familiar outer circle and inner horseshoe. These behemoths, dragged from quarries just 20 miles north, were shaped with astonishing precision. Mortise-and-tenon joints, like a giant stone puzzle, locked them into place, a technique so advanced it rivals later medieval craftsmanship. But here's the twist: Stonehenge's purpose remains a heated debate. Was it a temple where druids chanted under the solstice sun? A burial ground, as cremated human remains suggest? Or an astronomical calculator, its stones aligned with midsummer sunrises and midwinter sunsets like a Neolithic celestial clock? Perhaps the truth lies in all these answers. Cultures rarely build for just one reason. Stonehenge may have been a place where the living honored the dead, where farmers tracked the seasons, and where communities gathered under the same sky that still stretches above those weathered stones today. What's undeniable is the determination behind it, a people investing generations in a project whose meaning they carried in their hearts, not in written words. And that's what makes Stonehenge more than ruins. It's a silent conversation across millennia, waiting for us to listen. The bluestones of Stonehenge tell a story of obsession, one that begins in the rugged hills of western Wales, where these distinctive spotted dolerite rocks were quarried over 200 miles from Salisbury Plain. Why would Neolithic builders go to such extraordinary lengths? These stones, weighing up to 4 tons each, weren't just hauled overland. Their journey likely involved a mix of sledges, rollers, and even river rafts, a staggering multi-year undertaking requiring precise coordination and backbreaking labor. Recent discoveries in the Preseli Hills reveal not just quarry sites, but the very tools used to extract the bluestones: stone mauls, wedges, and levers that left telltale marks on the rock faces. Archaeologists have even found matching stone chips at Stonehenge itself, confirming the Welsh origin, but the real debate centers on how they moved them. One controversial theory suggests glaciers during the last ice age might have carried some bluestones partway, depositing them closer to Salisbury Plain. Yet, no glacial debris has been found near Stonehenge, and the stone's precise placement in the monument's design hints at intentional selection, not random scattering. The human transport theory paints a vivid picture. Imagine teams hauling these massive slabs on wooden sledges greased with animal fat, dragging them over log rollers across uneven terrain. Experimental archaeology has put this to the test. Modern attempts to replicate the feat required dozens of people pulling for weeks, with frequent breakdowns and injuries. Some researchers propose a water route, floating the stones on rafts down rivers like the Avon, then portaging them overland. It's a compelling idea, but river currents and hidden underwater obstacles would have made the journey perilous. Perhaps the most intriguing clue lies in folklore. Welsh legends speak of the bluestones possessing healing powers, stolen by the wizard Merlin and flown to England. Could this myth preserve a kernel of truth, that these stones were considered sacred, worth the impossible effort? Whether driven by spiritual belief or communal prestige, the bluestones journey remains one of prehistory's greatest logistical puzzles. Every scrape of stone on wood, every aching pull, echoes a question. What could compel people to move mountains, one rock at a time? While the bluestones represent an epic journey from distant Wales, the sarsen stones towering over Stonehenge today tell a different story, one of local grit and brute force engineering. These mammoth slabs, each averaging 25 tons, were sourced from the Marlborough Downs just 20 miles north of the site. But don't let that shorter distance fool you. Moving these sandstone giants would have been a Herculean feat. Unlike the dense bluestones, the sarsen's sheer size made them nearly impossible to lift. To Neolithic builders, they must have seemed like mountains made mobile. The Marlborough Downs offered an abundant supply of sarsens, naturally formed blocks of hard sandstone, scattered like a giant's abandoned toys across the landscape. But selecting the right stones was only the first hurdle. Shaping them required meticulous craftsmanship. Using stone mauls and antler picks, workers painstakingly pounded and chiseled these boulders into precise rectangular forms, some reaching heights of 22 feet. Then came the true test: transportation. Imagine teams of laborers maneuvering these colossal weights across uneven terrain, possibly using a combination of sledges, wooden rollers, and ropes made of twisted plant fibers. In the 1960s, archaeologist Richard Atkinson attempted to recreate this process with a modern team. Using a sledge and rollers, they managed to drag a 1-ton concrete block, far lighter than a real sarsen. But even that small-scale effort required dozens of people, constant adjustments, and frequent stops to reposition the rollers. Scaling that up to 25 tons would have demanded hundreds of workers coordinating in perfect harmony, not to mention an ingenious system of levers and pivots to navigate slopes and uneven ground. One theory suggests they might have built temporary wooden tracks, laying down a path of planks to reduce friction, an early form of railway centuries before the wheel arrived in Britain. But the real marvel lies in how these stones were erected. The tallest sarsens, forming Stonehenge's iconic trilithons, were raised using a technique that still astonishes engineers today. After digging deep pits with sloping sides, workers likely levered the stones upright with wooden poles, then packed the pits with rubble to secure them. The horizontal lintels, those were probably hauled up earthen ramps and carefully lowered into place using ropes and counterweights. And here's the clincher: each lintel was carved with subtle curves and joined to its uprights using precisely fitted mortise-and-tenon joints, a woodworking technique translated into stone. This wasn't just stacking rocks, it was architecture with a capital A, designed to stand for millennia. What's often overlooked is the social organization behind this effort. Moving and raising the sarsens wasn't just a technical challenge. It was a logistical masterpiece requiring food, housing, and coordination for hundreds, perhaps thousands, of workers. Seasonal gatherings might have turned the construction into a ritual itself, a communal pilgrimage where labor blended with celebration. The stones didn't just appear, they were brought to life through collective effort, a testament to what humans can achieve when united by a shared vision. And that vision still towers over Salisbury Plain, silent but thunderous in its implication. Our ancestors were far more than primitive farmers. They were the original architects of the impossible. The lintels of Stonehenge, those perfectly balanced horizontal stones crowning the monument, reveal a level of craftsmanship that still leaves engineers in awe. These massive slabs didn't just magically land atop the towering sarsens. Their placement was a calculated dance of physics and ingenuity. Each lintel, weighing several tons, had to be lifted precisely into position and locked into place using a technique we now call mortise-and-tenon joints, essentially Stone Age Lego. But unlike modern plastic bricks, these connections were carved from solid stone with near-surgical precision, a testament to Neolithic problem-solving at its finest. Imagine the challenge. After dragging these lintels across miles of countryside, workers faced the even more daunting task of hoisting them 20 feet into the air. Without cranes or pulleys, they likely built temporary earthen ramps, packed soil sloping gently against the upright stones, then painstakingly dragged each lintel upward using ropes made from plant fibers or animal hides. Experimental archaeologists have tested this method, revealing how teams might have used wooden frames as primitive cranes, leveraging counterweights and sheer manpower to inch the stones into place. One miscalculation, one slipped rope, and the entire effort could collapse in an instant. But the real genius lies in how these lintels were secured. Carvers shaped knob-like protrusions, or tenons, on the ends of each horizontal stone, while the uprights bore matching hollows, mortises, chiseled to exact dimensions. This wasn't rough approximation. Some joints fit with less than a millimeter of wiggle room. Achieving such accuracy with stone tools is like threading a needle while wearing mittens. The builders likely used pebbles or sand as primitive measuring guides, rubbing surfaces together to ensure perfect alignment. Once fitted, the weight of the lintel itself would have locked the joint permanently, resisting wind, weather, and even earthquakes. What's often overlooked is the astronomical foresight embedded in this design. The lintels weren't just structural. They formed a continuous ring that stabilized the entire circle, ensuring the monument's alignments with solstice sunrises remained true across centuries. This wasn't merely construction, it was celestial engineering. Every groove and curve whispers of a culture that understood the sky's rhythms well enough to immortalize them in stone. And when the last lintel clicked into place, Stonehenge became more than a collection of rocks. It transformed into a machine for tracking time itself, a silent conductor orchestrating the movements of the heavens. Beneath the shadow of Stonehenge's towering sarsens lies a quieter mystery: 56 chalk-filled pits known as the Aubrey Holes, named after the 17th century antiquarian John Aubrey, who first documented them. These unassuming cavities, arranged in a perfect circle just inside the monument's outer ditch, may hold the key to understanding Stonehenge's earliest purpose. Unlike the grandeur of the standing stones, the Aubrey Holes whisper secrets through subtle clues. Fragments of burned bone, chips of bluestone, and layers of crushed chalk that suggest these pits were far more than mere post holes. One compelling theory links the number 56 to celestial cycles. Researchers discovered that by moving markers between the holes at a fixed rate, the Aubrey Holes could track lunar eclipses, predicting when the moon would vanish into Earth's shadow. This Stonehenge eclipse calculator would have required shifting markers 2 pits per year, aligning with the moon's 18.6-year cycle. Imagine Neolithic sky watchers using this primitive but brilliant system to anticipate cosmic events, turning Stonehenge into a prehistoric observatory where ritual and science intertwined. Yet not all interpretations point skyward. Excavations revealed human cremation remains in many of the pits, some containing charred bones from dozens of individuals. This grisly evidence suggests Stonehenge's earliest phase might have been a vast cemetery, where the Aubrey Holes served as vessels for the dead. Curiously, the cremations aren't scattered randomly. They cluster in specific holes, hinting at deliberate patterns, perhaps familial lineages or ceremonial deposits tied to lunar phases. The presence of bluestone chips among the ashes adds another layer, implying these Welsh stones held funerary significance long before they were arranged as standing monoliths. Then there's the structural argument. Some archaeologists propose the Aubrey Holes originally held timber posts, forming a towering wooden circle predating the stone phase. This wood-henge theory gains traction from similar sites nearby, like Durrington Walls, where massive timber structures once stood. If true, Stonehenge may have begun as a ring of living trees, symbols of rebirth later replaced by enduring stone to eternalize its purpose. What makes the Aubrey Holes so fascinating is their ambiguity. They could simultaneously be an astronomical tool, a sacred cemetery, and the ghostly imprint of a vanished wooden monument. This multiplicity reflects Neolithic culture's layered worldview, where practical science, ancestor veneration, and spiritual symbolism weren't separate but woven into a single tapestry of meaning. Unlike the defiant permanence of the sarsens, the Aubrey Holes remind us that Stonehenge's story is written as much in earth and ash as it is in stone. One stone stands apart at Stonehenge, not part of the grand circle, but solitary and enigmatic, like a sentinel guarding the monument's secrets. The heel stone, a 20-foot-tall sarsen planted just outside the northeast entrance, holds a celestial secret. It aligns perfectly with the rising sun on the summer solstice, the longest day of the year. When dawn breaks on June 21st, the sun's golden arc appears to balance atop the heel stone, casting a long finger of light that pierces straight through the heart of the monument. This isn't random. It's a deliberate masterpiece of Neolithic engineering, a solar calendar carved into the landscape. But how precise is this alignment? Modern surveys show the sightline isn't just roughly accurate, it's calibrated to within a fraction of a degree. The builders accounted for the horizon's natural dip, positioning the heel stone so the solstice sunrise would appear exactly where they intended, year after year. Some researchers argue this alignment wasn't just symbolic. It may have served as a practical agricultural marker, signaling the time to plant crops or celebrate seasonal festivals. Others see it as a spiritual gateway, a moment when the boundary between earth and sky dissolved, allowing communication with ancestors or deities. Then there's the slaughter stone, a flattened sarsen lying near the entrance, its name dripping with Victorian melodrama. Early antiquarians, misinterpreting rusty red stains on its surface, assumed it was a sacrificial altar. But science tells a different story. Those stains are ordinary iron oxide, the result of rainwater reacting with minerals in the stone over millennia. Far from a site of bloodshed, this slab was likely once upright, part of a paired arrangement with the heel stone that framed the solstice sunrise like a colossal doorway. What's often overlooked is the acoustic dimension. During solstice events, the space between the heel stone and the monument's center acts as a natural amplifier, carrying voices and chants with eerie clarity. This suggests Stonehenge wasn't just a visual spectacle, it was a multisensory experience, where light, sound, and communal ritual intertwined. The heel stone's alignment wasn't merely about marking time, it was about creating moments of collective awe, when the skies themselves seemed to bow to human ingenuity. And that's the real wonder, not just that Neolithic people understood the heavens, but that they bent stone and earth to mirror the cosmos, turning a quiet patch of Salisbury Plain into a stage for the dance of the sun. Tucked among Stonehenge's towering sarsens and weathered bluestones lies a geological misfit, the altar stone. This flat, greenish slab, now broken and partially buried beneath the monument's central trilithons, doesn't match anything nearby. While the sarsens hail from local quarries and the bluestones trace back to Wales, the altar stone's origin has long baffled researchers. Its unusual composition, a fine-grained sandstone rich in mica, glitters subtly in sunlight, a stark contrast to the monument's muted grays. Recent geological analysis suggests it might have journeyed even farther than the bluestones, possibly from ancient riverbeds in Scotland or the Welsh borders, making it the ultimate outsider in Stonehenge's stone family. What makes this slab so special? Unlike the structural sarsens or the celestial-aligned bluestones, the altar stone's positioning hints at a deeply ritual role. It lies at the heart of the monument, directly aligned with the solstice sunrise corridor between the heel stone and slaughter stone. Some archaeologists propose it served as a sacrificial platform, though no blood residues survive, while others argue it was an anointing stone, rubbed with oils or pigments during ceremonies. Its flat surface, now eroded, might once have held offerings, grains, animal bones, or even symbolic carvings lost to time. Folklore adds another layer. Medieval texts called it the Stone of the Dead, linking it to Arthurian legends where fallen warriors were laid upon it. But the real intrigue lies in the altar stone's resilience. Unlike the sarsens, which were shaped with precision, this slab appears almost untouched by tools, its natural form deliberately chosen. Was its unworked state symbolic, representing raw earth power amidst human-carved grandeur? Or did its unique mineral content, high in barite, a rare element associated with spiritual protection in later cultures, mark it as sacred? The stone's greenish hue, caused by chloride, may have held significance too. Neolithic societies often associated green with life, growth, and the spirit world. Recent discoveries have only deepened the mystery. Soil samples around the altar stone contain traces of burnt organic material, suggesting repeated fires lit atop or near it. Yet there's no soot on the stone itself, implying items were burned beside it, perhaps in purification rites or as offerings. Even its breakage sparks debate. Did it crack under millennia of weather, or was it ritually killed, a practice seen in other ancient cultures where sacred objects were deliberately broken to release their power? The altar stone's true purpose may never be fully unraveled, but its very presence whispers of Stonehenge's layered meanings. It wasn't just an astronomical tool or a tomb. It was a stage for transformative acts, where earth and sky, life and death, met in a single slab of glittering stone. And in its silent defiance of geology's rules, a wanderer among locals, it reminds us that Stonehenge's builders sought not just grandeur, but the extraordinary. To shape the impossible, Stonehenge's builders relied not on magic or alien technology, but on simple tools crafted from the bones of the earth itself. Antler picks, stone mauls, and ox bone chisels were their engineering arsenal. Ordinary materials repurposed with extraordinary ingenuity. These weren't crude instruments, they were precision weapons against unyielding rock. Take the antler pick, a humble tool made from the tines of red deer antlers. Workers used them like prehistoric jackhammers. Driving the sharp tips into limestone seems to pry apart fissures. Archaeologists have found hundreds of these antlers discarded at quarry sites, their tips worn down to nubs from relentless pounding. Each flattened end tells a story of patience, of thousands of strikes echoing across generations. Then there were the stone mauls, fist-sized hammers made from dense sarsen or dolerite. These weren't random rocks. They were carefully selected for their hardness and shaped to fit snugly in a worker's grip. Modern experiments show how effective they could be. Striking at the right angle, a skilled worker could remove palm-sized flakes from a sarsen block in minutes. But there's a catch: the mauls shattered quickly, requiring constant replacement. At some quarries, debris fields contain thousands of broken maul fragments, a literal mountain of effort left behind. Bone chisels added finesse to brute force. Crafted from oxen leg bones, these tools were honed to razor-thin edges, perfect for carving intricate joints like the mortise-and-tenon connections that lock Stonehenge's lintels in place. Under magnification, the cut marks on these joints reveal a surgeon's precision, each groove and notch made by countless careful strokes. Yet for all their sophistication, these tools were perishable. Unlike metal, which can be resharpened, bone and antler wore down irreversibly. Every millimeter of progress came at the cost of the tool itself, a tangible reminder of the human effort behind each stone. The myth of lost advanced technology crumbles under the weight of evidence. No lasers, no alien alloys, just relentless labor and hard-won skill. What seems miraculous to us was the result of generations refining techniques through trial and error. When a bluestone shows chisel marks that curve slightly with the grain, or a sarsen bears the faint scalloping of successive maul strikes, we're witnessing the fingerprints of individuals' hands that knew exactly how to make stone obey. The real marvel isn't some vanished secret. It's the unbroken chain of knowledge passed from teacher to apprentice, a living technology as durable as the monument it built. Perhaps the most telling clue lies in the mistakes. Half-carved stones abandoned at quarries, lintels with misaligned joints later corrected. These imperfections reveal something profound. Stonehenge's builders weren't infallible gods, but problem solvers. They adapted, improvised, and above all, persisted. A broken antler pick wasn't a failure, it was a lesson, and with every shattered maul, they learned how to move mountains, one stubborn chip at a time. The sheer weight of Stonehenge's stones demands a radical question. How did Neolithic people multiply their own strength? Modern experiments show dragging a single 2-ton bluestone requires at least 20 people, so moving the 50-ton sarsens would have overwhelmed human muscle alone. The answer may lie in hoof prints preserved in the mud near Durrington Walls, a massive settlement just 2 miles from Stonehenge where builders likely lived. Here, archaeologists uncovered something startling: a surplus of cattle bones, many from young oxen in their prime. Butcher marks suggest these weren't ordinary meals. They were feasts on an industrial scale, with enough meat to feed thousands. This wasn't just food, it was fuel for a machine, and that machine was animal power. Oxen, with their immense pulling capacity, could have been Stonehenge's living engines. Hitched to wooden sledges with ropes made of twisted ivy or hide, a team of oxen might drag stones weighing several tons across log rollers, a technique depicted in ancient Egyptian tomb paintings centuries later. Where patterns on cattle bones at Durrington hint at hard labor, enlarged foot joints and spinal deformities consistent with years of heavy hauling. Yet there's a twist. Unlike later cultures that bred specialized draft animals, Neolithic cattle were smaller, closer to wild aurochs than modern plow oxen. This forces a reevaluation. Perhaps they didn't drag stones in one heroic pull, but in short, coordinated bursts, with teams rotating to prevent exhaustion. The log roller theory gets intriguing support from folklore. British legends speak of rolling stones, imbued with magic. Could these stories preserve ancestral memories of megaliths moving on wooden cylinders? Experimental archaeology tests this. Fresh-cut logs placed under a sledge reduce pulling effort by half, but they split under heavy loads after mere yards. The solution: a constant supply of fresh rollers, requiring an army of workers to shuttle them from back to front. This turns stone moving into a chaotic but calculated dance, where every step demands perfect timing. Then there's the terrain problem. Salisbury Plain's chalky soil turns slick in rain, making sledges prone to bogging down. Footprints found near Durrington show deeply pressed pathways, perhaps the result of hundreds of trips by both humans and animals. One provocative theory suggests they laid down temporary, corduroy roads, interwoven branches creating traction, much like the later Roman brushwood highways. If true, Stonehenge's construction relied not just on brute force, but on an entire ecosystem of labor. Forests harvested for rollers, grasslands feeding oxen, and communities sustaining workers. The real revelation from Durrington's feasts isn't just the scale of eating, it's the timing. Analysis of cattle teeth shows most were slaughtered in winter, right when the ground was frozen solid, ideal for sliding heavy loads. This wasn't random, it was orchestrated. Winter work meant stones could glide over frost-hardened earth. Then crews replenished their energy with protein-rich feasts between efforts. The bones tell a story of reciprocity. The more you hauled, the more you ate, turning labor into a ritual of shared purpose. Critics argue there's no direct evidence of oxen actually moving stones, but absence isn't proof. Neolithic people didn't carve their methods into rock. They encoded them in bones, soil, and the landscape itself. Those grooves worn into cattle skeletons, they're the real hieroglyphs of Stonehenge, spelling out a truth we're only beginning to read, that the monument's grandeur was lifted not just by human hands, but on the backs of animals who left no monuments, only scars and stories written in the earth. Beyond its towering stones and celestial alignments, Stonehenge holds an often overlooked secret: its voice. When struck with a hammerstone, some of the monument's bluestones produce a haunting metallic ring, like a giant's bell tolling across millennia. This acoustic oddity isn't coincidence. Recent studies suggest the entire site may have been designed as a resonant chamber, transforming rituals into immersive soundscapes. Archaeoacoustics, the study of ancient sound, reveals how the semicircular arrangement of upright stones creates distinct echo patterns, amplifying whispers from the center while muffling noises from outside. Step into that inner circle, and the acoustics shift dramatically. A chant or drumbeat would have reverberated between the stones, enveloping participants in a cascade of sound that felt almost supernatural. The magic lies in the bluestone's unique composition. Unlike the dull thud of local sarsens, these Welsh stones contain high concentrations of dolerite and rhyolite, crystalline structures that vibrate at specific frequencies when struck. Researchers from the Royal College of Art confirmed this by tapping over 1,000 rocks in the Preseli Hills, matching the sonic signatures to stones at Stonehenge. Some bluestones ring at frequencies between 110 and 120 Hz, the same range known to induce trance states in shamanic traditions. Could Neolithic builders have selected these stones not just for their color or origin, but for their voice? Then there's the layout's hidden geometry. Computer models show how sound waves would have bounced between the uprights, creating standing waves that reinforced certain pitches while canceling others. The arrangement isn't random. Gaps between stones act like acoustic filters, allowing low-frequency chants to carry while blocking wind noise. Even the missing lintels play a role. Their absence creates a sound window that may have directed echoes toward specific points, like the altar stone. This level of sonic engineering implies more than accident. It suggests generations of observation, experimentation, and fine-tuning. Modern experiments bring these theories to life. During solstice gatherings, researchers documented how a single drumbeat inside the circle travels outward in a ripple, returning as a delayed echo that merges with new beats, a natural delay effect. Vocal harmonics behave similarly, with overtones lingering just long enough to create an eerie chorus effect without distortion. Such phenomena would have been inexplicable to Neolithic worshippers, likely perceived as the voices of ancestors or gods answering from the stones themselves. But perhaps the most compelling evidence comes from nearby sites. In Wales's Carnmenyn region, the bluestone source archaeologists found numerous, ringing rocks with prehistoric cup marks where they were deliberately struck. These outcrops sit beside ancient springs, suggesting sound and water were ritually linked. At Stonehenge, the parallel is striking. The monument's avenue leads to the River Avon, as if channeling both sound and spirit along a sacred path. This wasn't just architecture, it was a multisensory portal where rhythm, resonance, and landscape merged. When sunlight flooded the circle on solstice dawn, accompanied by the deep hum of ringing stones, participants wouldn't just witness the ritual, they'd feel it in their bones. And in that convergence of sound and stone, time itself might have seemed to bend. Stonehenge wasn't always the incomplete circle we see today. Over 24 massive stones have vanished from the site, leaving behind only ghostly imprints in the chalky soil. The fate of these missing megaliths reads like a detective story, one that unravels across centuries of plunder, pragmatism, and even well-meaning mistakes. The Romans may have been the first to repurpose the stones after their invasion of Britain in 43 CE. Archaeologists have found sarsen chips embedded in nearby Roman-era roads, suggesting soldiers hacked apart some monoliths for paving material. But the real disappearing act began in the Middle Ages, when local builders treated Stonehenge as a free quarry. Church records from the 12th century mention sarsens being hauled away to construct Salisbury Cathedral's foundations, while manor houses across Wiltshire still stand atop Stonehenge's stolen bones. The 17th century diarist John Aubrey documented farmers breaking bluestones into fragments to use as hearthstones, believing the Welsh rock held magical warmth. By the Victorian era, souvenir hunters had turned theft into a cottage industry. Wealthy tourists would arrive with chisels, carving off palm-sized chunks while guides turned a blind eye. Some stones were obliterated entirely. The so-called slaughter stone was originally one of a pair until its companion vanished, likely crushed into gravel for country driveways. Even royalty got involved. King James I once commissioned an architect to dismantle part of the monument for a grand palace project, though locals sabotaged the effort by hiding the required ox teams. But the most controversial losses occurred in the 20th century under the guise of preservation. Restoration projects between 1900 and 1964 attempted to stabilize the site by re-erecting fallen stones and concrete. Workers broke several lintels during these efforts, then quietly buried the fragments on-site. Worse still, some original stone positions were misrecorded, meaning what we see today isn't the authentic Neolithic arrangement, but a mid-century interpretation. Modern laser scans reveal distressing details: drill holes from misplaced steel supports, concrete patches obscuring ancient tool marks, and even one upright stone accidentally installed backwards. The most haunting evidence lies in the soil. Ground-penetrating radar has detected buried stone fragments near the visitor center, likely discarded during restorations. Meanwhile, antique shops across England still occasionally sell genuine Stonehenge chips from dubious sources. Every missing piece carries a story of pragmatism, greed, or misguided care, but together, they represent a palimpsest of human interaction with this ancient wonder. The stones didn't just vanish, they were taken, one decision at a time, leaving us to ponder what truths were lost with each absence. In the shadow of Stonehenge's ancient stones, a different kind of mystery took hold in the 1970s, one that had less to do with Neolithic engineering and more to do with swirling rumors of unexplained energies and hovering lights. The Dragon Project, a fringe research initiative launched in 1977, set out to investigate claims that Stonehenge sat atop powerful, ley lines, hypothetical channels of Earth energy said to connect sacred sites across Britain. Armed with Geiger counters, infrared cameras, and electromagnetic field meters, a motley crew of physicists, dowsers, and self-proclaimed psychics descended on the monument, determined to measure what science had long dismissed as superstition. Their findings read like a paranormal potluck. Some participants reported sudden temperature drops near the bluestones, while others claimed their equipment spiked inexplicably at dawn, coinciding with solstice alignments. One investigator swore his compass spun wildly in the center of the circle, though subsequent tests found no magnetic anomalies. The most sensational claim came from a group of UFO watchers who documented strange lights over Salisbury Plain on multiple occasions, insisting they weren't aircraft or meteors but something else. Local newspapers eagerly amplified these stories, weaving them into existing folklore about Stonehenge as a portal or stargate. Archaeologists, however, remain skeptical. Ley lines themselves, first proposed by amateur historian Alfred Watkins in the 1920s, lack empirical evidence, often appearing on maps only when researchers cherry-pick which ancient sites to connect. As for the Dragon Project's equipment readings, critics pointed out that natural factors could explain most anomalies: groundwater flows affecting conductivity, temperature differentials in the chalk bedrock, even interference from nearby military radar installations. The compass incident, likely caused by a hidden iron artifact lodged in the soil, not mystical forces, yet dismissing these investigations as pure fantasy misses their cultural significance. The 1970s marked a peak in New Age fascination with ancient sites, fueled by counterculture movements seeking alternatives to mainstream science. Stonehenge, already shrouded in mystery, became a canvas for these projections, a place where the boundaries between archaeology and mythology blurred. Modern pagans gathered at the stones, insisting they could feel vibrations invisible to instruments. Meanwhile, the Dragon Project's leader, Paul Devereaux, later distanced himself from sensational claims, reframing the work as a study of human perception rather than supernatural phenomena. The real lesson here isn't about energy lines or UFOs, it's about how Stonehenge continually reinvents itself in the human imagination. Every era projects its own anxieties and aspirations onto these stones, from Victorian spiritualists to Cold War-era ufologists. Even today, debates rage about whether the monument's acoustic properties or subtle electromagnetic fields could have been harnessed by Neolithic builders, not as magic, but as forgotten science. The Dragon Project may not have proven the existence of Earth energies, but it revealed something just as profound: our endless desire to hear these ancient stones speak, even when their true language remains stubbornly, beautifully out of reach. Just 2 miles northeast of Stonehenge lies Durrington Walls, a sprawling prehistoric settlement that may hold the key to understanding who built the monument and why. This massive circular enclosure, nearly 500 meters across, wasn't just a village, it was a Neolithic boomtown, its wooden houses and feasting halls buzzing with activity during the very period Stonehenge's giant sarsens were being raised. Archaeologists have uncovered something remarkable here: thousands of pig bones, their teeth telling a startling story. By analyzing growth layers in these teeth, researchers determined most pigs were slaughtered at just 9 months old, and always in midwinter. This wasn't casual hunting, it was organized, large-scale feasting timed to the darkest days of the year. The scale of these gatherings is staggering. Estimates suggest over 4,000 pig bones were deposited in a single season, enough meat to feed thousands. Cut marks reveal careful butchery, with particular attention given to removing the right front leg, a possible ritual offering. More tellingly, chemical signatures in the bones show these pigs weren't local. They'd been raised miles away, perhaps in Wales or Western Britain, then driven to Durrington like prehistoric livestock trucks. This paints a vivid picture: winter solstice celebrations where workers gorged on roasted pork after hauling stones all day, their breath visible in the cold air as fires crackled against the longest nights. But Durrington's true revelation lies in its layout. The settlement's main avenue points directly toward the River Avon, mirroring Stonehenge's own ceremonial path to the water. This symmetry fuels the River Avon procession theory, the idea that Stonehenge and Durrington were two halves of a grand ritual landscape. Here's how it might have worked. At Durrington, the living celebrated feasts among timber circles, a wooden counterpart to Stonehenge's stone rings, then journeyed downriver to the stones, where ceremonies for the dead took place. Animal bones and household debris littered Durrington, while Stonehenge contains almost none, just cremated human remains. The river, acting as a symbolic boundary, connected these realms of life and afterlife. Footprints preserved in Durrington's mud add eerie detail. Archaeologists found adult and child tracks leading toward the riverbank, some dragging heavy loads. Could these be the actual footsteps of Stonehenge's builders, carrying tools or offerings between sites? The timing fits. Durrington peaked around 2500 BC, precisely when the sarsens were being erected. This wasn't just a workforce, it was a pilgrimage, with generations returning season after season to build something beyond any single lifetime. The real magic lies in what these discoveries imply about Neolithic society. Stonehenge didn't rise through slave labor or royal decree, but through collective effort: farmers, herders, and crafters uniting under a shared vision. Durrington was their base camp, where feasts reinforced social bonds and rewarded backbreaking work. The winter timing is no accident either. With fields fallow and livestock penned, thousands could gather without disrupting the agricultural cycle. In essence, Stonehenge wasn't just built with stone, it was built with pork feasts, river processions, and the sweat of temporary villages that vanished as completely as the wooden posts they once raised, leaving only bones and echoes by the river. Welsh legends weave a fantastical origin story for Stonehenge's bluestones, one where the wizard Merlin, wielding nothing but magic and cunning, uproots a circle of sacred stones from Ireland and flies them across the sea to Salisbury Plain. Medieval chronicler Geoffrey of Monmouth immortalized this tale in the 12th century, painting Merlin as the ultimate ancient engineer. But beneath this myth lies a startling grain of truth. The bluestones did come from distant lands, specifically the Preseli Hills of Wales, a journey so improbable that later generations could only explain it as supernatural. Geology tells a different, though no less astonishing, story. The bluestone's unique composition, spotted dolerite and rhyolite, matches outcrops in Wales's Carnarvon region so precisely that modern scientists can trace individual stones back to specific quarries. These quarries bear the scars of Neolithic labor, tool marks, wedge holes, and even abandoned half-carved monoliths. The real marvel isn't just the distance over 150 miles, but the cultural resolve behind it. Unlike Merlin's instant relocation, this was a generational undertaking, with stones likely transported in stages, perhaps as sacred objects passed between communities and ritual exchanges long before their final placement at Stonehenge. Folklore and science collide in the bluestones' purported healing powers. Welsh tradition holds that these rocks could cure ailments, a belief echoed in the names of nearby springs like Effin and Jaibai, where pilgrims once bathed in hopes of miracle cures. Intriguingly, the Preseli bluestones do contain trace minerals like copper and zinc, elements known for antiseptic properties in traditional medicine. Did Neolithic people value these stones not just for their durability, but as conduits of earthly energy? The answer might lie in the bones. Cremated remains found at Stonehenge show unusually high levels of these same minerals, hinting at rituals where the dead were symbolically treated with bluestone fragments. Yet the Merlin myth obscures a darker reality. Excavations at the Welsh quarries reveal signs of coercion, skeletal remains with injuries consistent with forced labor. This suggests the bluestones' journey wasn't always a sacred pilgrimage, but perhaps a testament to power, where elites commanded both stones and human lives. The legends erase this violence, replacing it with Merlin's effortless magic, a narrative more palatable to medieval audiences and perhaps to us. What endures is the duality of these stones. They are both geological fact and mythic symbol, their weight measured in tons and tales. The bluestones bridge worlds, between Wales and England, between Neolithic pragmatism and medieval imagination, between the hands that quarried them and the voices that later sang of Merlin's sorcery. And in that tension between what we can prove and what we yearn to believe, Stonehenge's true power endures, not as a monument of one time or people, but as a mirror, reflecting how every era remakes the past in its own image. In 1996, a team of modern builders took on a challenge that hadn't been attempted in over 4,000 years, moving and erecting a Stonehenge-sized monolith using only Neolithic tools and techniques. Sponsored by Nova and led by archaeologist Julian Richards, this bold experiment aimed to silence skeptics who claimed the monument's construction was beyond prehistoric capabilities. Their first hurdle, transporting a 40-ton sarsen stone from the Marlborough Downs, the same quarry suspected of supplying Stonehenge's giants. The team quickly discovered that theory and practice were worlds apart. Despite using a replica wooden sledge and log rollers, moving the stone required brute force and relentless coordination. Over 130 volunteers strained against hemp ropes, their progress measured in agonizingly slow feet per hour. The sledge snapped twice under the weight, while log rollers shattered like twigs, sending stone malls flying. Weather became an unplanned adversary. Rain turned the chalky soil into slippery sludge, forcing the team to wait for drier conditions. What looked feasible on paper became a grueling test of endurance, revealing just how much Neolithic builders had mastered through trial and error. Raising the stone proved even more perilous. Unlike modern cranes, the team relied on a frame of oak logs and a system of levers, a technique inferred from ancient post holes found near Stonehenge. As the stone inched upright, a sudden gust of wind nearly toppled it, underscoring the razor-thin margin for error. Finally, after days of sweat and near disasters, the monolith stood, but with a critical difference. Without the mortise-and-tenon joints that lock Stonehenge's lintels in place, the Nova team's lintel wobbled precariously. This single oversight highlighted the sophistication of the original builders, who understood that stability required more than just stacking rocks. The experiment's most revealing insight wasn't about tools or timelines, it was about scale. Moving and erecting just one sarsen took weeks, suggesting Stonehenge's full construction would have demanded a rotating workforce of hundreds, possibly thousands, across decades. Yet the Nova team also stumbled onto an unexpected advantage: communal rhythm. When workers synchronized their pulls to drum beats, the stone moved more efficiently. A eureka, a moment that hinted at how music and ritual might have been as vital as muscle. Later experiments added nuance. In 2010, University College London engineers demonstrated that tilting stones onto wooden trackways reduced the needed force by half, while a 2017 project showed that ball bearings made from small stones could facilitate pivoting. Each attempt peeled back another layer of Neolithic ingenuity, transforming Stonehenge from a static mystery into a living testament of problem solving. These modern replicas, for all their sweat and splintered wood, still fall short in one key respect. They're temporary weekend projects for enthusiasts, not generational endeavors fueled by sacred purpose. The real magic of Stonehenge lies not just in how it was built, but in the unbroken will of those who believed it must be built. Every chip of antler on stone, every snapped rope, was a dialogue between humanity and the impossible, one we're still learning to hear. Buried just 3 miles from Stonehenge, the Amesbury archer emerges from the earth's grip with secrets clinging to his bones. This 4,000-year-old traveler, discovered in 2002, wasn't laid to rest like ordinary folk. His grave held treasures unheard of in Bronze Age Britain: gold hair ornaments, copper knives, and pottery from distant lands. The sheer extravagance of his burial suggests someone far beyond a local farmer. But what ties this mysterious figure to the towering stones just a short walk away? Forensic science paints a startling portrait. Isotope analysis of his teeth reveals he grew up in the Alpine region of Central Europe, likely modern-day Switzerland or Germany. His left kneecap shows signs of a crushing injury, perhaps from years of heavy labor carrying stones. Some speculate the archer's grave goods tell a story of both privilege and craft. Those gold ornaments, among the earliest gold objects ever found in Britain, their craftsmanship mirrors techniques from the continent. The copper knives display metallurgical knowledge that would have been cutting edge literally for the time. This wasn't just a wealthy visitor. This was someone who carried rare skills across the channel. Archaeologists debate whether he was a metalworker supplying tools for Stonehenge's construction, or perhaps an architect overseeing the final phases. His grave's proximity to the monument is too deliberate to ignore. Unlike typical burials of the era, his body was positioned facing northeast toward the sunrise alignment of Stonehenge's heel stone. Coincidence feels unlikely when dealing with a culture that mapped the heavens into stone. Then there's the archer's companion, a younger man buried nearby, likely his son or apprentice, born and raised in Britain. Their graves form a poignant pair, the immigrant master and the local heir. The younger man's bones show signs of repetitive stress from archery, hinting at a possible role guarding the sacred site or its builders. Together, they embody a tantalizing theory that Stonehenge's later stages relied on imported expertise, with continental artisans sharing knowledge that transformed local building traditions. But not everyone sees the archer as a benevolent teacher. Some skeletal evidence suggests violence, a missing kneecap replaced by a bone infection, perhaps from a battle wound. Could he have been a hostage, his skills coerced by local chieftains, or a rival leader vanquished and buried with honor to appease his spirit? The gold might signify respect, or it might be a ward against supernatural retribution. What's undeniable is the timing. The archer lived and died around 2300 BC precisely, when Stonehenge's massive sarsens were being raised. His grave goods mirror materials used in the monument's construction: copper for tools, gold for ornamentation, and even traces of the same Preseli bluestone dust found in nearby pits. Whether architect, prisoner, or something in between, the Amesbury archer stands as a flesh and blood reminder that Stonehenge was never just a local project. Its stones drew people across continents, binding distant lives into a single enduring mystery. And in that shared humanity, across millennia and mountains, we hear the real echo of these ancient stones. Stonehenge doesn't just mark the passage of time, it converses with the cosmos. The monument's most famous alignment, the summer solstice sunrise, is no accident. As dawn breaks on June 21st, the sun's golden disk appears to hover perfectly above the heel stone, its light slicing through the monument's heart like a celestial blade. But this is just one thread in a far richer tapestry of astronomical precision. The winter solstice sunset, often overshadowed by its midsummer counterpart, holds equal significance. On December 21st, the sun's dying light retreats precisely between the towering trilithons, framing the shortest day in a tableau of stone and shadow. These aren't rough approximations. Modern surveys confirm the alignments are accurate to within a fraction of a degree, a feat requiring generations of meticulous sky watching. Yet the sun's dance is only half the story. Stonehenge's architects also encoded the moon's more elusive rhythms into its design. Every 18.6 years, the moon enters what astronomers call a major standstill, a rare event where it reaches its farthest northern and southern positions on the horizon. During these extremes, the moonrise and moonset align with Stonehenge's stationed stones, 4 lesser-known monoliths forming a rectangle around the main circle. This 18.6-year cycle was so precisely understood that some researchers believe the 56 Aubrey Holes served as a counting mechanism, tracking lunar phases and eclipses by moving markers between pits. Imagine Neolithic sky watchers whispering predictions as the moon slid into alignment, confirming celestial patterns observed since their grandparents' time. The equinoxes, too, weave into this cosmic choreography. Though less dramatic than solstices, the spring and autumn moments when day and night hang in perfect balance leave their mark. The monument's main axis, while primarily solstice-aligned, also hints at equinoctial connections through secondary sightlines between stones. Some archaeologists propose that these alignments weren't just observational but participatory, that rituals timed to these celestial events transformed Stonehenge into a stage where human actions mirrored heavenly movements. When the sun or moon stood still in the sky, so too did the community below, their chants and ceremonies echoing the universe's pauses. What's often overlooked is the imperfection of these alignments. Modern expectations of pinpoint accuracy clash with Neolithic reality. Some alignments are slightly off, not because of error, but because the builders prioritized visibility over abstraction. The heel stone, for instance, isn't placed where the solstice sun mathematically rises, but where it appears to rise from the monument's center, accounting for the observer's vantage point and the horizon's natural curve. This subtle distinction reveals a culture that blended empirical observation with lived experience, marrying exactitude with the human eye's poetry. The true genius of these alignments lies in their multiplicity. Stonehenge wasn't a single-purpose calendar but a layered cosmological model, where solstices, equinoxes, and lunar extremes coexisted in stone. Each generation likely added new understandings, refining alignments as their knowledge deepened. The monument's longevity allowed for this cumulative wisdom, a slow dialogue between earth and sky, etched not in parchment, but in the immutable language of megaliths. And when the moon completes its next major standstill, or the solstice sun strikes the altar stone just so, we're reminded, these stones don't just mark time. They hold it across millennia in their unyielding grasp. Less than a kilometer north of Stonehenge stretches an earthwork so massive it dwarfs the famous stone circle, the Greater Cursus. This 3-kilometer-long rectangular enclosure, its parallel ditches and banks still visible after millennia, raises more questions than answers. Built centuries before the stones arrived, its purpose remains one of archaeology's great enigmas. But recent discoveries suggest this wasn't just a boundary. It may have been a colossal ritual pathway where Neolithic people enacted ceremonies we can only begin to imagine. The dimensions alone inspire awe. Stretching nearly 100 meters wide in places, the Cursus forms a near-perfect east-west axis across the landscape. Excavations reveal its ditches were dug with antler picks to depths exceeding 2 meters, an astonishing investment of labor for a structure with no obvious defensive purpose. Its orientation mirrors celestial patterns, aligning roughly with the equinox sunrises and sunsets. This deliberate positioning hints at a connection to solar cycles, but the real clue lies in what archaeologists haven't found. Unlike Stonehenge, the Cursus contains almost no artifacts, no tools, no burials, no everyday debris. This emptiness suggests it wasn't a settlement or cemetery, but a space reserved for something transcendent. One provocative theory emerges from folklore. Medieval Welsh texts describe mythical, sun chariot, races ritual contests where deities raced across the sky. Could the Cursus have hosted similar ceremonies, with processions or symbolic races mirroring the sun's journey? Experimental archaeologist Ronald Hutton led a team testing this idea, timing how long it took participants to walk the Cursus's length at different times of year. Their findings were uncanny. Completing the route at dawn during the equinoxes took almost exactly as long as the sun takes to rise above the horizon. This wasn't just walking, it was choreographed celestial theater. Then there's the tantalizing discovery of post holes along the Cursus's inner edges, ghosts of wooden structures that once stood like theater wings flanking a stage. Some researchers propose these held torches or banners, guiding nighttime processions under the stars. Others suggest they marked stations where rituals paused, perhaps reenacting creation myths or ancestral journeys. The Cursus doesn't exist in isolation. It forms a triad with Stonehenge and the nearby Lesser Cursus, creating a ritual landscape where movement between sites may have been as sacred as the destinations themselves. Perhaps the most striking evidence comes from the Cursus's western terminus. There, archaeologists uncovered the remains of a massive wooden pole, its base charred from deliberate burning. This wasn't casual destruction, it was ritual termination, a practice seen at other Neolithic sites where objects were killed to release their spiritual power. Facing this pole stood a cluster of antler picks, their tines worn smooth from digging, placed carefully as if in offering. Together, they paint a picture of grand finales, ceremonies climaxing with fire and dedication before participants moved onward, leaving only silence in their wake. What makes the Cursus so compelling is its ambiguity. Unlike Stonehenge's precise alignments, its purpose resists easy categorization. Was it a processional avenue, a cosmic racecourse, or a symbolic representation of the sun's path across the underworld? The answer may lie in all these interpretations. Neolithic spirituality rarely fits modern binaries. Their rituals likely blended practical astronomy, ancestor veneration, and communal storytelling into a single seamless act. The Cursus wasn't just built to be seen, it was built to be walked, a sacred script written in earth and motion, waiting for feet to bring its meaning to life. And in that endless stretch between its banks, we sense not just a monument, but a performance, one where every step was a prayer, and the horizon itself was the altar. Beneath the visible majesty of Stonehenge's standing stones lies an invisible world, a hidden topography of earthworks, pathways, and buried structures that transform this iconic monument from a solitary circle into the heart of a vast ceremonial landscape. Thanks to cutting-edge LiDAR technology, archaeologists can now peel back layers of turf and time, revealing a sprawling network of ancient features etched into Salisbury Plain like ghostly fingerprints. These laser scans show Stonehenge wasn't an isolated marvel, but the centerpiece of a ritual complex stretching for miles, where every mound, ditch, and avenue served a purpose we're only beginning to decipher. One of the most striking revelations is the avenue, a 300-meter-long processional path connecting Stonehenge to the River Avon. What appears today as faint parallel banks was once a grand corridor, its chalk surface packed firm by countless feet. LiDAR images expose subtle undulations invisible to the naked eye, showing how this path curves deliberately to frame the summer solstice sunrise as walkers approach the stones. But the avenue isn't alone. Scans uncover over a dozen smaller pathways radiating outward, some leading to nearby timber circles like Durrington walls, others vanishing into the landscape like unfinished whispers. These weren't mere foot trails. Their precise alignments suggest they guided ritual movements, choreographing pilgrims' journeys to mirror celestial patterns. Then there are the barrows, hundreds of burial mounds dotting the surrounding grassland. LiDAR's laser pulses differentiate between natural hills and human-made tumuli with startling clarity, exposing previously unknown mounds clustered in deliberate formations. Some arrange themselves in celestial patterns, mirroring constellations, while others form lines pointing toward Stonehenge like stone arrows. These aren't random graves. Their placement hints at a landscape envisioned as a bridge between earth and sky, where the dead were laid to rest in cosmic alignment. Excavations in these barrows reveal cremated remains accompanied by bluestone chips, physical proof that Stonehenge's magic extended beyond its circle, carried in fragments to sanctify the departed. But the real game-changer emerged when LiDAR uncovered the Cuckoo Stone, a fallen sarsen half-buried near a Neolithic spring. Once dismissed as a natural boulder, scans showed tool marks and a deliberately flattened base, proving it was originally upright. This solitary sentinel, positioned exactly halfway between Stonehenge and Durrington walls, suggests an entire ritual axis linking monuments across the landscape. Springs like this held spiritual significance. Isotopic analysis of nearby artifacts reveals offerings of wheat, animal bones, and even infant remains, hinting at ceremonies where water and stone intertwined. The most haunting discovery lies in the LiDAR shadows, a series of massive pits arranged in concentric circles around Stonehenge's periphery. Dubbed the Great Circle, these 20-foot wide depressions predate the stones by centuries, their fills containing charred flint and animal bones. Some align with lunar standstill positions, while others frame sightlines to distant hills where beacon fires might have burned. This hidden architecture transforms our understanding of Stonehenge's purpose, not just a temple or calendar, but the nucleus of a living ritual machine, where every pit and post hole played a role in ceremonies spanning generations. What makes these LiDAR revelations so profound is their impermanence. Unlike the enduring sarsens, most of these features were ephemeral banked earth that eroded, wooden posts that rotted, chalk pathways that grassed over. They remind us that Stonehenge's true power wasn't just in stone, but in movement, processions wending along the avenue, fires flickering in pit alignments, communities gathering where the seen and unseen worlds converged. The lasers haven't just mapped soil and stone. They've illuminated a lost choreography of belief, written in the land itself and waiting 4,000 years for its curtain call. DNA evidence has rewritten the story of Stonehenge's builders, replacing wild speculation with something far more fascinating: real human journeys etched in bone and blood. Recent genetic studies of Neolithic remains across Britain reveal a population in flux around 4000 BCE, as migratory waves of early farmers from Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, mixed with local hunter-gatherers. These Anatolian migrants didn't arrive empty-handed. They brought domesticated wheat, cattle, and revolutionary stone working techniques that would later shape Salisbury Plain's megaliths. Their DNA tells a tale of gradual integration rather than conquest, with isotopic analysis showing intermarriage between newcomers and indigenous groups over generations. The myth of Stonehenge as an alien creation crumbles under this genetic scrutiny. Skeletal remains buried near the monument carry distinct markers linking them to these Anatolian ancestors, not extraterrestrial visitors. One key study analyzed teeth from over 50 individuals found within a mile of Stonehenge, dating from 3000 to 2500 BCE. The results: a consistent genetic signature matching earlier Neolithic farmer populations from continental Europe, with minimal trace of the hunter-gatherer lineages that dominated Britain before agriculture. This wasn't an isolated workforce, it was a thriving community with deep roots in migrant traditions. But the real surprise lies in the Amesbury archer's DNA. While this high-status Bronze Age traveler hailed from the Alps, his genetic profile shows ancestral ties to the same Anatolian farmer groups, proving these connections endured for millennia. His presence suggests that even centuries after Stonehenge's initial construction, knowledge and materials flowed along these ancient kinship networks. The bluestones from Wales, the gold from Cornwall, these weren't random choices, but legacies of a cultural memory stretching back to the migrant farmers' original homelands, where megalithic traditions first took root. Critically, this genetic evidence dispels the outdated notion that megalith building was a uniquely Western European phenomenon. Similar stone circles appear in Anatolia and the Caucasus, erected by the ancestors of those who later migrated westward. The technology likely traveled with them, a cultural toolkit passed down through generations, adapting to new landscapes. Stonehenge's distinctive features, like its mortise-and-tenon joints, find echoes in older Anatolian woodworking techniques, suggesting these builders didn't reinvent the wheel but refined inherited knowledge. The takeaway is profound. Stonehenge wasn't built by mystical outsiders, but by ordinary people, descendants of migrants who transformed Britain's landscape and society. Their story mirrors modern human experiences, the blending of traditions, the resilience of cultural memory, and the universal drive to leave a mark on the world. When we look at those towering sarsens, we're not seeing alien handiwork, we're seeing the culmination of generations crossing seas, sharing ideas, and bending stone to their collective will. And in that shared humanity, the monument's true marvel comes into focus. Deep in the mist-shrouded Preseli Hills of Wales, archaeologists have uncovered the ancient workshops where Stonehenge's bluestones were born. Recent excavations at Carn Godog and Craig Rose Y Felin reveal a hive of Neolithic activity, crude stone wedges still jammed into fissures, hammerstones littering the ground like discarded tools on a factory floor. But the real revelation comes from so-called loading platforms. Terraced outcrops where partially detached stones were carefully levered onto wooden sledges before their epic journey to Salisbury Plain. These aren't random scratches on rock. They're the birth scars of megaliths, preserved with eerie clarity under layers of peat and time. One platform at Craig Rose Y Felin shows telltale grooves where workers rocked a massive dolerite pillar back and forth, gradually prying it free with timber levers. The precision is astonishing. Vertical tool marks climb the quarry face like ladder rungs, each one a snapshot of coordinated effort. Nearby, a discarded maulstone bears microscopic bluestone dust, proof it was used to shape the very material it's made from. Even more telling are the charcoal deposits found wedged beneath boulders, remnants of fires lit to expand cracks by heating the rock, then dousing it with water to exploit thermal stress. This wasn't just quarrying, it was stone engineering at its most inventive. The Carn Godog site adds another layer to the story. Here, archaeologists discovered a series of stone ramps leading down from the outcrops, their surfaces worn smooth by repeated dragging. At the base of one ramp lies a crescent-shaped arrangement of smaller rocks, a makeshift dry dock where sledges could be stabilized before the long haul south. The genius lies in the logistics. These loading zones were positioned just downhill from natural fracture lines, allowing workers to exploit gravity rather than fight it. But perhaps the most haunting find comes from the tools themselves. Among the scattered hammerstones, researchers identified several with distinctive wear patterns, rounded edges from being passed hand to hand over generations. These weren't disposable implements, but likely cherished family possessions, their smooth grips molded by decades of use. Some even bear faint ochre stains, hinting at ritual blessings before the stone's extraction. The quarries also challenge old assumptions about transportation. Prehistory's rugged terrain makes dragging multi-ton slabs seem impossible, yet the discovery of a prehistoric haul road changes the equation. This pathway, a natural gully widened with stone clearance, leads directly toward the Nevern River, supporting theories that bluestones began their journey by water. River cobbles found near the quarries, their edges chipped from use as ballast, suggest rafts were built on-site rather than at the coast. What emerges from these Welsh hills isn't just a construction site, but a cultural landscape. The quarries sit atop sacred springs, their waters still rich with iron oxides that stain the bedrock red, a color Neolithic cultures associated with life and transformation. Nearby, excavated post holes outline temporary shelters where workers lived seasonally, their hearths filled with charred hazelnut shells dating to 3400 BC. This was no slave labor camp, but a pilgrimage site where extraction blended with ceremony. The ultimate takeaway: Stonehenge's magic didn't start on Salisbury Plain. It was born here, in these rain-lashed crags, where every strike of stone on stone carried the weight of belief. And in the quiet of the Prehistories, surrounded by abandoned malls and half-detached monoliths, we can almost hear the echoes of a question: what force, divine or communal, could move not just rocks, but an entire people to such extraordinary effort? The answer lies not in the quarry's scars, but in the spaces between them, where ambition outpaced even the hardest stone. Less than 10 miles from Stonehenge's towering stones, archaeologists unearthed something that could rewrite our understanding of Neolithic engineering: intricate carvings etched into the soft chalk bedrock of a hillside near the village of Larkhill. These aren't random scratches, but deliberate geometric patterns, concentric circles, radiating lines, and perfect arcs that mirror the monument's iconic layout with uncanny precision. Dated to around 3000 BC, centuries before the sarsens were raised, these carvings might just be Stonehenge's earliest blueprints, preserved not on parchment, but in the earth itself. The discovery came during routine surveys for a military housing development in 2018. As researchers brushed away centuries of soil, the chalk revealed grooves carved with startling symmetry. Some designs resemble the monument's outer ditch and bank, while others echo the placement of the Aubrey Holes, those mysterious pits encircling Stonehenge's first phase. The most compelling carving, though, is a series of nested arcs that match the curvature of the sarsen circle's inner face. This level of accuracy suggests more than doodling. It implies measurement, planning, and perhaps even scale. But how would Neolithic builders have used these carvings? Without rulers or compasses, they likely relied on simple techniques, perhaps stretching ropes between pegs to create perfect circles, or using notched sticks to replicate angles. The Larkhill carvings show signs of repeated scoring, as if generations of architects returned to refine the designs. Some grooves are deep and worn, suggesting they held symbolic meaning beyond mere planning, maybe ritual tracing during ceremonies, or even practice for apprentices learning sacred geometry. Parallel discoveries add weight to this theory. At nearby Durrington Walls, excavators found similar chalk carvings beneath the remains of a Neolithic house. These depict linear patterns resembling the avenue leading to Stonehenge, complete with small cup-marked stones that may represent the heel stone or other markers. Even more striking are carvings uncovered near the River Avon, a series of meandering lines that could map the processional route from water to monument, complete with deliberate kinks that match bends in the actual landscape. Not everyone accepts the blueprint interpretation. Some researchers argue these carvings could be star maps, since certain patterns align with constellations visible during the Bronze Age. Others suggest they're territorial markers or even early calendars. But the Larkhill carvings' proximity to Stonehenge, combined with their precise geometric match, makes a compelling case for architectural intent. After all, modern builders still sketch plans in dust before breaking ground. Why wouldn't Neolithic engineers do the same? What's often overlooked is the tactile nature of these designs. Unlike modern blueprints, these carvings were meant to be felt as much as seen. Running fingers along the grooves would have allowed blindfolded initiates to read the monument's layout, embedding its sacred geometry into memory through touch. Some carvings even incorporate natural chalk ripples, blending human artistry with the land's own contours, a reminder that Stonehenge wasn't imposed on the landscape, but emerged from an intimate dialogue with it. The most haunting detail: several carvings show erased sections, where grooves were deliberately smoothed over and redrawn. These revisions mirror actual changes in Stonehenge's construction phases, like the shift from timber circles to bluestones, then finally to sarsens. In these ghostly palimpsests, we glimpse the fluidity of Neolithic design, not a rigid master plan, but an evolving vision, scratched into chalk as each generation added its voice to the conversation. Whether sacred schematics or celestial maps, these carvings prove one thing: Stonehenge didn't spring fully formed from myth. It was imagined, debated, and painstakingly revised, not in some lost ledger, but in the very bones of the land. And in the quiet of these chalk lines, 4,000 years later, we can still trace the fingerprints of the first dreamers who saw a circle in the earth and dared to raise it to the sky. The same winds that carried pollen across ancient Britain also carried something far more precious: opportunity. Around 5,000 years ago, as Neolithic farmers first broke ground near Salisbury Plain, they did so during a climatic sweet spot known as the Holocene thermal maximum. Temperatures hovered 2 to 3 degrees warmer than today, turning the landscape into a patchwork of oak forests and fertile grasslands buzzing with life. Rivers ran higher, soil grew richer, and herds of deer and wild cattle thrived. This wasn't just good weather, it was a golden age that made the impossible seem within reach. Abundance on this scale changes what a society dreams of. With reliable harvests and plentiful game, communities could shift from mere survival to something grander: monumental architecture that required thousands of free hands. Pollen samples from nearby bogs tell the story. Layers of grass and herb pollen dominate the strata from this period, indicating open landscapes perfect for grazing and agriculture. But there's a telling shift around 3000 BCE, a sudden spike in plantain and nettle pollen, classic markers of disturbed earth. This was the sound of shovels hitting chalk, of antler picks prying into bedrock. The land itself bears witness to Stonehenge's birth. The climate didn't just enable construction, it demanded it. Warmer temps brought higher rainfall, saturating the chalky soil. Neolithic farmers needed to drain their fields, and what began as practical ditch digging may have evolved into ritualized earthworks. The earliest phase of Stonehenge, that circular ditch and bank, mirrors drainage systems found at contemporary farmsteads, but on a colossal scale. This wasn't just engineering, it was alchemy, turning mundane necessity into sacred geometry. Yet the warm period's greatest gift was time. Longer growing seasons meant surplus food, freeing people from dawn to dusk toil. Imagine a community where every family could spare a member for weeks or months to haul stones, carve joints, or tend to ritual fires. Animal bones from Durrington walls reveal another clue: slaughtered pigs born in spring but killed in midwinter, suggesting herds fattened quickly enough to become feasting staples within a single year. Such abundance didn't just feed workers, it fueled their ambition. But climate, like everything, cuts both ways. By the time Stonehenge's last sarsens were raised around 2500 BCE, the thermal maximum was waning. Tree rings from preserved bog oaks show increasingly erratic growth patterns, drought years followed by deluges. The very conditions that birthed the monument may have also sealed its fate. Later phases show signs of haste: lintels with uneven joints, stones set slightly off axis, were the builders racing against changing weather, Or did the shifting climate reshape their beliefs, turning solar alignments from practical calendars into desperate prayers for stability? The lesson written in this warm period's soil is profound. Societies don't build marvels when they're struggling to survive, they build them when the land whispers that anything is possible. Stonehenge stands not just as a triumph of engineering, but as a monument to fleeting climatic grace, a reminder that civilization's greatest leaps often come on the shoulders of a friendly sky. And when that sky changes, as it always does, what remains are the stones, silent witnesses to the brief, brilliant moment when Earth and climate conspired to let humanity touch the heavens. Centuries after the last stone was set in place, Stonehenge still guards its deepest secrets with the same stubborn silence that defied Victorian treasure hunters and modern scientists alike. What lingers isn't just the back-breaking transport of Welsh bluestones, the precision of mortise-and-tenon joints carved with stone tools, but the why. Why invest generations in hauling mountains across landscapes? Why encode moon cycles and solstice sunrises into unyielding rock? The answers slip through our fingers like chalk dust, revealing just enough to keep us hungry for more. Perhaps the real magic lies in the questions themselves. Every broken antler pick unearthed, every laser scan of hidden carvings, pulls us deeper into a conversation with people who saw the world in ways we're still unraveling. They left no written records, but their language is etched in the lean of the heel stone toward midsummer's dawn, in the echoing chime of a struck bluestone, in the way winter moonlight still threads perfectly between the trilithons. These aren't just architectural feats, they're bridges across time, inviting us to wonder what moved our ancestors to such heights of collaboration and precision. So what do you think? Was Stonehenge a celestial calendar, a sacred cemetery, or something even more unexpected? The debate thrives because the evidence whispers rather than shouts, leaving room for discovery. Maybe you've stood in that circle at solstice, feeling the hairs on your neck rise as sunlight spills through the stones. Or maybe you've pieced together a theory from fragments overlooked by textbooks. Whatever your take, the conversation doesn't end here. Drop your thoughts below. The most compelling mysteries are the ones we solve together. And if uncovering history's hidden layers sparks your curiosity, hit that subscribe button. More ancient enigmas await, each with its own story clawing at the dirt, ready to be told. Until then, keep looking up and down and all around. The past isn't finished with us yet.